So the first top 10 list I ever did was my top 10 best Ed, Edd, and Eddy episodes list. In fact, the first few videos I did were Ed, Edd, and Eddy. What can I say? I loved that show so much. It's one of my all-time favorites. And there are a few great episodes I feel I haven't given their due of praise to. And by a few, I mean at least 10 episodes that I feel deserve some praise. Also, since I never did an honorable mention section of my Ed, Edd, and Eddy list, you can consider this the other episodes I was considering for my list. And as much as I love these episodes, I think it would be better to review them all in one video instead of giving them each their own video. So let's get right to it and review some more classic episodes of Ed, Edd, and Eddy. Classic episodes like An Ed is Born. This is the one that probably got mentioned the most in the comment section of my Ed, Edd, and Eddy list. And I can see why. It's one of the episodes that captures the Ed, Edd, and Eddy charm the best. It's about Eddy getting a package of baby stuff from his brother, which is probably some of the best big sibling hazing ever, and wanting to make a home movie for his brother showing how much he's grown up, and all the mishap that you would expect to happen from Eddy trying to look cool for his brother.
You have vandalized Rose's face, and you have stolen Rose's chicken shit again!
This is up there with Vertigo as having some of the best slapstick in the show. But whereas Vertigo's slapstick was strengthened by sound effects and quick-paced visual gags, this one's slapstick is strengthened by the camera work. An example of what I mean is this scene here where the Kankers attack Eddy.
Hiya, Eddy! I got you, Eddy!
Now you would expect crappy camera work to be obnoxious, but here it works so well because it fits the tone of the episode, and it does seem like how things go for kids when they're trying to make a movie. Kids nowadays, and this was even more true in the early 2000s when cameras weren't on their phones, have trouble figuring out how cameras work, and this is kind of what it looks like when they're trying to figure out how to make a movie for the first time. Also, Eddy has to do a lot of improvising because of all the things that go wrong in the video, and his improvisations highlight why Eddy is one of the funniest characters from all of Cartoon Network.
Hey, Double Dweeb, you getting this?
He collects underwear and gives it to the poor. Pretty stupid, huh, bro? Yep, Ed's just fixing my old car. It's not quite ready yet.
And there's of course that classic scene where Ed eats the camera. I mean, that scene is so bizarre that it's damn near impossible not to laugh at it.
You should know better than to eat the camera. Just think of what it could do to your digestive tract.
Oh, I can't wait to see that part, Double D.
This is definitely a classic episode, and I can see why so many fans consider it a top 10 episode. For me, this would be number 11, but make no mistake, I absolutely adore every single second of this episode. Just like I adore every single second of the episode The Day the Ed Stood Still. Now, I'm a sucker for any show I like making parodies of classic movies, and classic monster movies is no exception. This episode is about the Eds making a carnival scam and Ed wanting to be a monster, so Double D decides to make Ed a monster suit to attract customers. But Ed's overactive imagination takes over and he actually becomes a monster and terrorizes the cul-de-sac.
Heavens, it's Jimmy! Jimmy? Oh my.
This episode is filled with excellent parodies of monster tropes. Like, for example, the suspense of not knowing what the monster looks like. At first, all you see is its shadow, then bits and pieces of it as the episode builds up to its big reveal. And when the reveal of it finally comes, it's actually kinda chilling.
Nice entrance.
It completely nails this classic monster movie feel. But not only are its monster tropes great, there's actually a pretty subtle adult joke I never noticed before when the Eds are under Eddy's bed, and there's crumpled up tissue paper and porno magazines under there. Yeah, let's just say I highly doubt the episode's hinting that Eddy was blowing his nose. Now, if you're a kid and you don't understand this joke, that's probably for the best. But if you do understand this joke, you'll either be really shocked or laugh your ass off. Me, I laughed my fucking ass off. It's just more to love about this amazing episode. But it wasn't the only episode where they parodied classic movie genres. Dawn of the Eds parodies classic science fiction movies. When the Eds scavenge for bottles to recycle for Jawbreaker money, Ed comes across a poster for a new R-rated space robot movie and the Eds decide to try and sneak in. But while on the way there, Ed tells him the plot of the movie, and through very clever animation, the plot of the movie ends up becoming the plot of the episode as the Eds end up wrecking in a junkyard and become lost.
They're sucked into a dimensional time portal that transports them to the robot planet. The heroes find their ship destroyed. They're marooned on the robot planet.
Well, the Eds decide to turn the junkyard into their own little sci-fi action flick and create armors and weapons out of junk. And they even come across this badass van that would later become the Eds' hangout spot in a few episodes down the road. And what's interesting about this episode is that this is one of those episodes where the Eds really are just playing like normal kids. They're using their imagination and creating a legitimately fun experience with what they have around them, which is actually very common for kids who need some way to alleviate their boredom. And making your own science fiction adventure is one of the best ways to get your creative juices flowing.
Missed me! You lose!
Not to mention there's also this great line from Ed about how rated R movies on regular television absolutely blow.
We'll see it on TV in a year.
Yeah, with all the good stuff cut out.
Man, Ed could not be more right about that. Overall, this episode is really well done. It not only does a great job parodying its source material, but it's one of the episodes that captures the joy and imagination kids have perfectly. It's an overall amazing episode. Just like this next amazing episode, Glass of Warm Ed. Now, originally, I did want to put this episode on my top 10 best Ed, Edd, and Eddy episodes list, but I took it off because at the time, I didn't really know what to say about it. It felt kind of like 1 + 1 = Ed, in the sense that it was one of those episodes you actually need to see in order to understand why it's so good. But now I feel there's actually a lot I can say about it. It's about Double D and Eddy realizing that Ed is sleepwalking and eating everyone's food. And I already relate to this episode hardcore. I get the midnight munchies like crazy. In fact, Ed's munchies are so bad that he ends up almost eating Jimmy, causing Eddy to say this really strange out of context line.
Good thing I'm a man of the world.
I don't even know what to make of that line. If it's referencing something, it's nothing I've seen before. But regardless, that line always cracks me up because of how strange it is. Also, this is probably the only episode where a kid could almost be swallowed whole, and it's actually funny. It's also really entertaining to see the amount of enjoyment Eddy gets out of watching Ed. It's almost like Eddy is the perfect representation of the viewer watching this whole episode.
Have a seat, front row center to the greatest show on earth!
Are you gonna share those?
Also, you know what else makes this episode stand out? It's one of the only episodes where the Eds actually win in the end. After Ed eats everyone's food, he grows so big that he gets stuck in his window. So the next day, the Eds open up a scam called Edmart where they sell all the neighborhood kids back their food from Ed's belly.
Here we go. Here you go, Johnny.
I love Chunky Pops.
And that's actually how the episode ends. They don't get caught, they don't get in trouble, they actually get away with this. It's actually pretty interesting, and it's such a fun and strange watch. Almost as fun and strange as the next episode, Once Upon an Ed. When the Eds get stuck in Johnny's wall, Johnny agrees to help them out if they tell him a bedtime story. So they decide to tell him about the events that led to them getting stuck in his wall. And each of the Eds' stories is told in the exact way you'd expect the Eds to tell them. Eddy is very overly exaggerated and narcissistic, Double D's is more closer to reality, but still shows the other Eds acting more moronic than usual, and Ed's story is clearly ripped off from a monster movie he saw before any of this happened. Now, this episode is kind of like if 1 + 1 = Ed and Mirror Mirror on the Ed had a baby. It's so damn insane that you can't help but want to see where it's gonna go.
Ed, your story's getting weird.
And it also shows you how the Eds see the other characters they interact with. In Eddy's story, he of course portrays Kevin as a stupid monkey, he has Jimmy in a diaper, Naz is in a swimsuit, and Rolf, well...
Please sign on the dotted line, Rolf. Thank you.
Take care of my jawbreaker, as I'm a simpleton.
Yeah, I think this is implying that Eddy doesn't even view Rolf as human, more as a strange alien creature. And it's interesting to see these characters from Eddy's perspective. But the highlight of this episode is by far Ed's story. This is where all the strange creativity that made 1 + 1 = Ed so good comes out. It involves the Cankers becoming 50-foot tall monsters that turn everything into cleaning products, which we all know would be Ed's worst nightmare. Hell, even the way Ed views Double D is really clever.
Yap, yap, blah, blah, dribble, dribble, dribble.
Hey, what's going on?
Yappy, yap, yap.
Yeah, I do honestly believe this is what Ed hears whenever Double D talks. Hell, I think any viewer has had a moment where Double D sounds like this. And I'm impressed that they were able to take the strangeness of one episode and charmful humor from another episode and combine them into something so enjoyable and so creative. Enjoyable and creative like the episode Who, What, Where, Ed, which is about the Eds trying to get a chicken from Rolf so they can never run out of eggs, and ending up having to do a bunch of favors for all the kids around the neighborhood. This one is just a trip to watch. The whole episode is literally nothing but the Eds trying to get an egg, and all these extra obstacles that present themselves just to get this egg. First, all they need is sawdust, but to get the sawdust, they need to paint Kevin's shed. But they need paint from Jimmy, who wants clams, which Johnny just so happens to have gotten. Johnny wants a tennis racket for the clams, and I'm sure you figured out the pattern by now. This episode is just an absolute trip, and every time a new favor presents itself, you're just left there wondering,
When will it end?
But honestly, this episode is such a fun little watch. I'm actually stunned they made doing obscure favors such an entertaining concept, and were able to put as much creativity and humor in it as possible. Like this scene here where the Eds are looking for clams.
Say, you haven't seen any clams around here, have you?
Could we borrow a cup of clams?
Can Eddy come out to play? I'm right beside you, Ed. Hi, Eddy!
And the ending is also really clever. The Eds find themselves back at Rolf's needing plums he just picked in order to complete all the favors needed for his egg. And they finally catch a break when Rolf agrees to trade his plums for Ed's yo-yo.
Well,
Yeah. Goodbye.
be right back!
Now, the reason I bring this up is because it's kinda hard not to question why they didn't just trade the yo-yo for the egg and save themselves all that running back and forth nonsense. But if I had to offer an explanation, it's because either Rolf didn't want the yo-yo for the egg, but he was okay with trading it for the plums, or because the Eds are just idiots. Which seems pretty plausible considering this is a season 1 episode, and the Eds, yes, Double D included, weren't exactly the brightest bulbs in the box during that season when it came to doing things the easy way. As was shown in the episode Pop Goes the Ed, where the Eds offer a bee exterminating service, and Ed and Double D beat up the beehive with baseball bats. Yeah, see what I mean by not exactly bright? Run, Eds! You're being chased by a giant atom diagram! And for the record, aside from a very humorous opening and one of the funniest designs of Ed and Double D, this part really doesn't connect much to the rest of the episode because it goes from Ed asking,
Eddy, could we do something else?
to the Ed suddenly freaking out about the day being hot and looking for ways to stay cool, before they hear that one of the neighborhood kids is throwing a sprinkler party. Only one issue though.
You're not invited!
Well, that sucks. But don't worry, Eds, I totally know what that's like. And of course, Eddy doesn't listen, and he and the other Eds decide to get ready for the party and wear some of the tightest Speedos you'll ever see. Good God Almighty, man.
My word. They look like napkins.
Cool box, Eddy.
And the Eds crash the party and make total Eds of themselves. In fact, this episode is a perfect example of why the Eds were so ostracized. I mean, right from the start, it's hinted they have no idea how to be social. Just look at this scene here where they try to mingle with the other kids.
The incision was made here to relieve the tremendous pressure.
But it was too late. His head exploded.
With the slicing and cleaving, the gnashing and the severing.
Larry!
Yeah, let's be honest, we all know that one weird group like this that clearly have no boundaries. Hell, maybe some of us were in that group at one point. And as you'd expect, I can't talk about this episode without talking about this classic scene here, when the Eds try one last time to make themselves the life of the party. absolutely hilarious. That's every kid's worst nightmare right there. It's the diving into the pool and your swimming trunks come off in front of all your classmates nightmare. Just this one has a different twist on it, and that's always been the show's style. It'll make a reference to certain things we know all too well, but put a different spin on them, and it never felt like this show had an issue doing that. More proof of that can be found in the episode Know-It-All Ed, which is literally about the Eds finding turkey basters and pawning them off as Canadian squirt guns.
Yeah, a Canadian squirt gun. Canadians are weird.
Yeah, this episode has some of the best one-liners from Ed. They aren't as frequent as the classic one-liners in Over Your Ed, but they're certainly more memorable.
Blank reminds me of fresh-cut spring flowers spewing across a babbling brook with a hint of lemon.
Ah, who knew Ed was such a poet? Anyway, the Eds market these squirt guns to the kids in a pretty ingenious Wild West way, and all the kids start playing cowboys with them, with Eddy, as you'd expect, appointing himself as sheriff of the cul-de-sac, with some really great little parody jokes towards Wild West tropes.
This cowboy stuff is murder on your legs.
And also, as you'd expect, the Kankers appoint themselves as outlaws and terrorize the cul-de-sac.
What is it this time, girls? Ode to Wood Rot or Crankshaft number 5? Crankshaft! Perfume!
This is yet another classic Ed, Edd, and Eddy episode. It's arguably one of the most memorable episodes of the show, and I guarantee many kids were turning their parents' turkey basters into water guns after watching this episode. Some might have even gotten grounded for that, but it's just one of those episodes that found a way to really stand out. Something the episode Hand-Me-Down Ed also managed to do, but this one had a different way to stand out and be as memorable as it is, because its setup is not only really bizarre, it also allowed its writers to have an absolute ball with the script. It's about a mysterious boomerang ending up in the cul-de-sac that messes with the personalities of the kids who touch it. Yes, that's the actual setup, and it's absolutely hilarious.
I feel an analysis is in order to determine the vessel's quantity of magnitude and direction.
Truth be told, I don't know what exactly the boomerang is doing though. For most of the kids, it seems like it's reversing their personalities. Like, it makes Ed smart, Eddy very feminine, Jimmy strong, Sarah sweet, but I have no idea what it does to Double D or Rolf. If you're reversing their personalities, you'd expect it to make Double D stupid and Rolf, well, honestly, I'd expect him to act very normal, kinda like SpongeBob in Not Normal, for example. But instead, they act like this.
Chill, bro. I'm sizzling in this heat.
Well, I guess with Double D, you could argue it's making him more laid back as opposed to high-strung, but I don't know if that's exactly reversing his personality. Seems more like it's reversing a bad habit he has. So, I don't know exactly how this boomerang works, but honestly, that doesn't even matter. Every single thing it does to these kids, whether it follows a pattern or not, is hilarious. Double D strips down, Eddy dresses in drag and treats his suitcase as a baby, Jimmy throws a mailbox on Kevin, which is actually really satisfying to see. It's an overall amazing episode, and while it's also found a way to stand out, I'd still go as far as to call it a bit underrated. But not as underrated as the last episode I'll be talking about, Every Which Way But Ed. Well, you've probably noticed by now I haven't talked about any Season 5 episodes yet. And I don't mean in just this video, I mean ever. Honestly, as much as I love this show, I gotta admit this season was really weak compared to the others. But that doesn't mean there aren't a few episodes that stand out from this season, and this one is one of the best. It's about Eddy getting a jawbreaker off of Johnny, but when he flashes back to tell the other Eds how he managed to do that, the Eds end up getting lost in the flashbacks.
Bully! How the heck we get here?
There's so much creativity in these flashbacks that eventually you stick around because you're curious what the next flashback is going to be like. And each one has its own level of entertainment. Also, what makes this episode one of the best of Season 5 to me is that this episode uses these flashbacks to reveal more information about the kids in the cul-de-sac. Stuff that's actually kinda interesting. It reveals where the chip and plane came from, it reveals that Naz used to be fat, it even reveals that Jimmy wears a retainer because one of Eddy's scams ruined his teeth.
It's a bowling pin, Sarah! They tricked me!
It also shows you how the Edds first met when they were children, which was because of Eddy's first ever scam. So, in a way, it shows that scams have literally been a part of their history since they were toddlers.
$4 eat this humongous TV set! For you, only a quarter.
I'll give you 2, for it would be impossible for the human esophagus to manage such a feat.
It's actually pretty amazing that there was so much information about this show that I never even knew I wanted to know, and yet still ended up finding very interesting. I'm always a sucker for episodes that like to explain little things about the show, and this is one of the best I've seen do that, because of its creativity, humor, and clever writing. And that honestly sums up the whole show. Humorous, creative, and cleverly written. That was Ed, Edd and Eddy's style all throughout its run, and it did all this with the style that was really all its own. Ed, Edd and Eddy, to me, is an example of a show that can be imitated, but never duplicated. It has a feel to it that is literally all its own, and that's what makes it a Cartoon Network classic. Anyway, it's been a lot of fun revisiting this show, but it's time to move onwards to other things. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next... Ow! What the shit was that?
Hello, Jem Reviews.